yesterday was.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Calgary Real Estate Joe on the second day of spring in Calgary. Doesn't this happen every single March? March is our snowiest month, and it is consistent, right? At least March, we give
And
you
we always
credit.
have
You are
snow.
consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We always
But
have.
on the other hand, I was rollerblading with my son 3 days ago. So, you take the good with the bad.
I'm
Exactly.
blaming our friend Courtney Atkinson in Lethbridge for putting on his summer like slicks on his SUV. What was it last week, Natalie?
Yeah, I think so. It was like
Yeah,
he's made us have a snowstorm to come.
yeah,
So
yeah. Anywho, well, we'll get through it. Eventually, it'll warm up and all the snow will melt again. But we do need the moisture, and that is not just me saying that. The city of Calgary has already come out and said that there's going to be watering restrictions. So
yeah.
we need more. But as I was chatting with somebody this morning, it's like, why couldn't it just be rain, right? Rain would be fine for a few days. We could take that.
Yeah.
Anyhow. Let's get into it. Let's get into our weekly stats. We are back from our vacation and excited to be full on into the spring market. We sell more homes traditionally from March, April to June, than a lot of times throughout the rest of the year combined. So it's very, very busy. And you can see that from the stats here. Look at the last 5 weeks, the growth in both listings and sales. So basically the same this week for new listings. Sold's jumped up again. So if you look at our sale to new listing ratio over the last 5 weeks, so if you look at 5 weeks, then we have a trend, right? The lowest it's been now in the last 5 weeks is 129% sale to new listing ratio. So
Yep.
that is a seller's market 100%. And by the way, we're going to be getting into how to buy a home successfully in Calgary right now in today's show. So I want you to stay tuned for that amongst the other things we'll be doing. So we'll get into how do you be successful in a multiple offer situation, things like that. Pendings of 541, massive jump up in pendings. So wait for those next week. Could we see an over 700 sale number? I would say that's very, very possible. Days on market went down again this week. And then our actives and pending. So, despite all the sales, there's still one slipping through the cracks because we're up, over 200 active listings, active and pending listings since 5 weeks ago. So that is positive. I'm not one of those people that says, oh, this should be a seller's market. We're fortunate. We have, five or six listings coming up in April, Natalie?
Mm-hmm. I think it's 5.
Yeah. So we're happy to be on the listing side. We also have buyers too, right? So we want there to be more balance, and sellers still do very, very well price wise, but it's so much better on the buying side when you have a little bit more inventory, right? So that is the weekly situation. But when we look back at last year at the same time, Natalie,
we will head over there. So last year we had 582 sales. This year 627. So we're up 8%. New listings last year, 747. This year, 763. So we're up 2%. Actives last year, 3157. This year, 2517. So we're down 20%. So that's where a lot of that pain is coming from. Days on market last year was 26. This year, it's 19. So it's down 27%. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. What I find interesting is really the last few weeks, the pendings last year were very, very high. So I'm not sure I'm not a statistician by any stretch, but I just find that maybe it's a bit of an anomaly because their sales typically have been above last year. Maybe more deals fell apart last year. Hard to say with the interest rates changing. And on that note, Jaden, what is happening?
They're not changing. It's the exact same as last week. But you know what? There's a lot of interesting things going on in the background, right? So a lot of these interests, these are kind of the posted interest rates that I see out there. And in the back of all of that, this bond yield market is just kind of going up and down, up and down. And so like last week, the CPI, the inflation data came in lower than expected. I think it was 2.8%. They were kind of thinking that it was going to jump out to above 3 again in that 3.1 range. And prior to that, about 2 weeks ago, the bond market had really started cratering. And then some things in the background in terms of oil and gas and stuff like that brought it back up by about a quarter point. And so through all of this, they've built in their margin enough that nothing is really moving. But the interesting thing with it is after that CPI data, the bond market started coming down again. So what does that mean for you when you're out buying right now? It means that when you go to certain lenders who really follow that bond market closely and will give pricing exceptions, you can ask for a pricing exception that is more substantial as that bond market goes down. So if you're working with a good broker, they're going to keep on top of things like that, so that as the bond market goes down, they put in their price request and maybe knock a couple of points off the mortgage interest rate, and then keep doing that until you take possession of the house and get you the lowest possible interest rate. If you go into deal with your local banker, which maybe you have a great relationship with them, and that's fantastic, you've dealt with them for the last 20 years or whatever, love your bank, that's great. They're not going to do that. I'm telling you right now that the rate that you get at that moment, it doesn't matter if your house is closing 3 months from now, it's just not going to happen. So really important in this, when this fluctuation is going on, that you're working with somebody that pays attention to that, so that not only can you get probably hopefully a good rate up front, but then you can chisel it away as the market turns here prior to you closing your purchase.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great info. And you may love your bank, but there's a reason why they make billions and billions of dollars every year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're, that's our motto as brokers, and is, the banker works for the bank, I work for you. That's kind of how it tends to go, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a great way of putting it. All right, so welcome to our special segment of how to buy a home in Calgary right now, today. Maybe not today because the weather's horrible, but I spoke about this last night at our business networking group. Jaden had a great presentation that I felt complemented that. So we wanted to give you some advice. Maybe it's not you. You might have a son or daughter that's looking to get into the market. And I think, this may seem obvious to some people that have bought and may not have, or you maybe never have had a realtor say, actually, I'd like to speak to you for, 10, 20, 30 minutes on Zoom prior to going out looking at homes. And that is what we do. So the step number one is the pre-approval. And Jaden, you and I and Natalie, we know how important this is. I'm going to speak from the realtor side, and then I want you to speak from the mortgage broker side. But without a pre-approval, we're like a sailboat without a rudder. We're like a ship without a rudder, right? We know generally you did an online calculator and you can afford $650. But maybe there's something, and Jaden, jump in here, but maybe there's something in their credit history where, actually they're at 600 or they're at 550, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that credit that you see online, that is the consumer credit score that you're getting. We don't work off of that. It's completely different than what you would get if you do an actual pre-approval. So people come in and tell me they have great credit all the time. And I tell them, well, this is the score. No, I have a 750. Well, no, here it's 680. We can still work with 680. But those numbers that you get on online don't really mean anything.
Okay, sounds good. So we will post a link, and Jaden, maybe if you can in the chat right now, just post a link to your pre-approval tool. And I'm not sure if that will show up on all the platforms. If it doesn't, we'll try and post it after. But step one is the pre-approval. We're happy to talk to you prior to talking to Jaden or whichever mortgage broker or bank you're using. But really get that. When we have clients that have that pre-approval in place, you have a lot more power than a client that is you might be competing with, which we'll talk about here in a second. So pre-approval is step number one. So step two is the buyer consultation. So what do we do during this buyer consultation? We ask you everything about why you're moving, where you want to be, what are your whats, but also what are the whys. So a very good example that I always use that was given to me was, let's say somebody says to us, well, we want to be backing onto a golf course. And we would say, well, tell me more about that. Well, we don't like having backyard neighbors. Well, there might be a much less expensive way to not have backyard neighbors than backing onto a golf course, for example, right? So it's not only the whats, it's also the whys. And so we are better equipped to help you through the whole process. And I said last night, and I say it all the time, we're like real estate guides, right? You give us the information that's going to help you with the purchase. And we're going to ask you questions that delve a little bit deeper. And then number two, really important part of this equation is, what is your situation now, right? Are you renting, right? If you're renting, when is your lease done? Could you get out of your lease sooner? I would say a lot of landlords right now would let you out of your lease sooner, especially if you signed it a year or two ago, right? So that's a huge part of it as well. When do you want to be in your new home? Because right now, if you say to us, Mark and Natalie, we want to be in our new home in September, we're probably too early to go physically look at the market right now, because the market could be vastly different. And I can tell you, I don't think there's a seller out there right now that would take 120-day, 180-day possession. Typically, most sellers, Natalie, chime in here too, most sellers we're finding 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, right?
At the longest, typically.
Yeah. It's a quick possession market for whatever reason. So, so that's step two, buyer consultation. Number three is understanding the market. And I think the buyer consultation is very important. The pre-approval is unbelievably important. But once you get to step three, now you have to understand the market. You might have heard, oh, well, it's a buyer's market. Well, that's Canada. Calgary is an outlier, and I do interviews with the Calgary Herald from time to time. And I just had one last week. I'm chatting with Joel Schlesinger from the Calgary Herald. And we're talking about how Calgary has been an outlier for the last 4 years, right? Not an outlier because there were sellers markets, but where it's consistently a seller's market. And that's where we're still in. So we have to understand we are in a seller's market. So here's a good example. Mahogany in the past 30 days, priced under $700,000, the sale to list price percentage of 100%. So, back when I started in the business back in 2016, 17, 18, 19, if we had clients that had a pre-approval number of 600,000, we might bump that even up to 640, 650, because we could get a deal. We could go in there and negotiate and get them 30, 40, 50 grand off list price because there was more sellers than there were buyers. And now that has flip-flopped. There are more buyers than sellers, hence we have a seller's market. So you have to understand, if Jaden's giving you a pre-approval of 600, that's the max you should be looking to, right? And I've said this so many times, but this is how you are successful. Look at a house that's 575 or 550. The odds are it's going to be going over list price if it's priced properly, and we'll be able to do what we call a quick CMA when it comes down to that point and explain the value in that home. So, and that was, just as a note here, that was for detached, semi-detached, and row townhouses was 100%. For apartment condos in Mahogany, it was almost 102%. So just something to keep in mind. And here's the last tip that I will give you. You have to move quickly. So especially if you say to us, Mark and Natalie, we want to be in by June. Okay, well, we got some work to do, right? If you're in that scenario, you want to be in by June, you want to be in by July, when a home hits your search. So we set you up on a search, you get those emails either as soon as they hit the market or daily, depending on what your preference is and what your timing is. As soon as you see that home, we need to go see it. If it's what we call our 85% home, it reaches 85% of your checklist, you should go see it. And the odds are you should write an offer on it. So there's a few tips for you, and that's just a very microcosm of having success in this market. And then the last thing is a bonus tip that I would say here. And Natalie, I want you to speak to this, is the letter. So let's say we know we're getting into a multiple offer situation. Tell us about the letter.
The letter is so important. It sounds sort of cheesy, but you write a letter to the seller basically saying, I love this home. I can envision my family living in it. We have 2 kids and we just want a nice big backyard like you have, all that kind of stuff. You speak to that emotional quotient, and it's actually shocking how many times a seller has chosen a buyer in a multiple offer that the price is actually a little bit less than another offer, but that touched them emotionally, because people have that most people have that emotional attachment to that house, right? They've raised their family in it, all that kind of stuff. So that's a pretty big thing. And we do it on tons of of offers, don't we? We've done
Yeah,
a
we
lot.
sure do. Yeah. So I think what we'll do next week is this segment will be about multiple offers and how to succeed in a multiple offer situation. But let's move on from that today because we're running a little long anyway. So tell us about this fantastic eyesore of a kitchen.
How to make a modern kitchen warm and timeless. Okay, we can whip through this. The one is playing with graphic angles. I love this. They built it sort of under their stairwell, so they've incorporated shelving into there. It just looks really, really cool. But okay, moving on. Choose a standout stone or unexpected material. So the kitchen on the left has that beautiful wraparound stone, and it's sort of smoothed out, so that really makes it pop. The one on the right has used concrete integrated in with their wood cabinetry. So it's beautiful. Divide with style. I love this. This is a really cool thing to do, especially if you have an open concept, which has changed with people. They don't necessarily want that big box of a room anymore. So it really divides the space. And they've, on the left side of the picture, you can see where the fireplace is. They've incorporated those built-in bookcases to go with that dividing line that goes between the kitchen. But it works really, really well. Choose colored appliances or a funky tile. Totally love this. I love the white and gold appliances. I know they're not going to be in vogue in like 10 years, but I love them. They're so pretty. And I do love that tile on the right. It just really adds, you can take a very, neutral kitchen and really make it pop. So
that's it. That was really cool. Thank you. So community events, I'm just going to highlight one thing here. So the Calgary Wranglers, we're big Wrangler fans. Values awesome for the high level of hockey. So they are playing next week 2 games against Coachella Valley, which is the team in Palm Springs. And then I believe San Jose on the weekend, Friday and the Sunday. So there you go. That's a wrap on today's show. Jaden, thanks for that great input as always. If you guys have questions about how to succeed as a buyer in this market, whether it's starting with the pre-approval, reach out to Jaden. We will post his pre-approval website tool on the chats here and in the comments up or down, depending on where you're watching it. And any final thoughts, Jaden, Natalie?
No, the last thing I would say about the pre-approval is that if it's done right, if you have all your documents up front, it's just such an effective tool, even in the offer, to be able to go in and say, 3 days, we can do this in 3 days, we'll wrap it up, because your broker knows you have everything to do it. So
and that's huge.
Absolutely. So but other than that, great to see you guys. Hopefully next week we have sun and melted snow.
Yeah,
that'd be great. That'd be great.
Optimistic. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks everyone. We'll see you in a week.
Bye guys.
Bye.